Yeah, I'll be happy to. Yeah, no problem. No, we were just talking about year by year. We just talking about this, not the Chalice, but again, the world, like being fortunate.
There you go.
Probably not the whole job. Exactly. That's what it is.
Good morning. My name is Peggy Rodney, and I'm a worship associate here at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Peter. Whoever you are, whoever you love, wherever you come from, welcome. We're glad you were able to join us this morning. We come here for different reasons: to find community, to seek spiritual and personal truths, to question, to nurture our heart and soul, to be nurtured, to explore new ideas, to find comfort, and perhaps to find the answers to some of our bigger questions. We come from different places, different religions, different beliefs, and different backgrounds. We hope to find comfort, connection, challenge, and love here. On the back of your order of service, there should be a QR code. That's for contact tracing. If you would take a moment sometime before you leave today to do that, it would be greatly appreciated. And now also, if you have your phones out, would you also take that opportunity to silence any ringers or alarms? We have one announcement today. On Tuesday evening, November 6th at 6 p.m., in Chardon on the Square, there will be a remembrance of Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. In Nazi Germany, Austria, and Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia, 267 synagogues were burned and destroyed, 7,500 Jewish businesses, schools, and homes were looted or burned or destroyed, 100 were killed, and 30,000 young Jewish men were rounded up and sent to concentration camps. Please come to stand in remembrance, in solidarity, and to stand against hate. Bring a candle in your resolve. Our chalice lighting this morning, if you would please join me in the unison reading. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its love. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
I invite you to help me out this morning with the call to worship by opening Grade Hymnal to number 646. There's some of the text that is in normal print, and I'll say that part. And there's some of the text that is in italics, and you'll say that part. And we will call one another into the larger circle of worship this morning. We clasp the hands of those that go before us. And the hands of those behind us. We enter the little circle of each other's arms. And the larger circle of others whose hands are holding hands. And the larger circle of all creatures. As we in and out of life, who also to a music so subtle and vast that no ear hears it. May our ears be open to that music as we move in that dance of life with one another this morning.
Please rise in God and Spirit and join in singing our opening hymn, number 336, All My Memories of Love. And as a gentle reminder, we ask that you keep your masks on and sing gently.
We enter now into a time of sharing our joys and concerns with one another by the placing of stones in water. And again, I encourage you to come forward if you have a joy or a concern, but also hopefully after the service you'll have a chance to share with one another about the things that are going on in your life. We will still have a little time to be social afterward. If you're tuning in on Facebook this morning and you want to share a joy or concern, I invite you to put that in the chat window. or in a comment, I guess, whatever happens on Facebook. We do have a concern from our Joys and Concerns book. If you want to share something with the whole congregation, we do have a book that's in the narthex that you can write in before the service. And Alicia is asking us to keep her mother's family in our thoughts as they mourn the loss of her Uncle Leo. We also have some members of the congregation who are in the hospital this week, and we place a stone of care and concern for them. I invite you to come forward if you have a joy or concern on your heart. Place a final stone for those joys that don't yet have a way to be expressed and those concerns that haven't yet found their voice. Now I invite you into a time of greeting one another in a way that is safe and respectful, and I'll just remind you, make sure that your mask is back up over your nose after we've been singing and talking a little bit. Sometimes they move, they don't fit really well, so that we can keep one another as safe and healthy as possible. Today is a special day. This is the part where I talk about how special today is without saying much of anything as you settle back into your seats. It's a skill ministers learn, how to speak without really saying anything. Today is a special day, October 31st, and it's a time of year when somehow throughout human history, people from all over the world in all kinds of different cultures have honored the departed at this time of year. For some reason, it just is the right time to do that. And so today we are going to be honoring our ancestors and our more recently departed. And we're going to light 5 candles throughout the service for different categories of people that have touched our lives and have departed and will continue to be, or that we continue to be in relationship with. And the first candle that we light today is for parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents who have As we were looking at material for this more liturgical service, Peggy found this ancestral mathematics. In order to be born, here's what you need. 2 parents, 4 grandparents, 8 great-grandparents, 16 second great-grandparents, 32 third great-grandparents, 64 fourth great-grandparents, 128 fifth great-grandparents, 258 sixth great-grandparents, 512 seventh great-grandparents, 1,024 eighth great-grandparents, 2,048 ninth great-grandparents. I suppose we could keep going, but for you to be born today, from 12 previous generations, you needed a total of 4,094 ancestors over the last 400 years. So think for a moment, how many struggles, how many battles, how many difficulties, how much sadness, how much happiness, how many love stories, how many expressions of hope for the future did your ancestors experience for you to exist in this present moment? This picture here, that handsome devil is my grandfather. He came over to this country with his family from Italy when he was 9 years old. They were Catholic, Italian Catholic family. They moved to Tampa. They did not have a car. So his mother, my great-grandmother, decided that since the Catholic Church was a mile walk for them, and there was a Baptist church right across the street, that they were going to be Baptist. And because they decided, just out of convenience, well, she decided that that was the way the family worked. They didn't decide. She decided that they were going to go to the Baptist church. Out of convenience, my grandfather was a part of that congregation and went to some revival that they were having. And so the visiting minister at that Baptist church told him that God had placed a call on his life and he should go into the ministry. So my grandfather became a Baptist minister, went to seminary, was a part of the Southern Baptist Mission Board. He worked with Spanish-speaking congregations in Florida, just going wherever the Southern Baptist Mission Board sent him in Florida. And he was a minister because my great-grandmother made this decision just out of convenience that she didn't want to walk a mile to go to church. It's amazing what impact it has on our lives for other people to just make decisions of convenience, not even intentional, thoughtful, I want this for future generations. but just seemingly inconsequential little things. And as we celebrate our relationship to ancestors today, we might also be mindful that there are those who will call us ancestors. And the decisions that we make will affect their lives in ways that we can't predict. I would not be who I am or where I am today if my grandfather had not been a Baptist minister and set an example of ministry to me that made sense to me, even if his theology didn't make sense to me. The way he was with people made sense to me. That was my first way of identifying what it means to be a minister, was to watch him and to see his example. And he wouldn't have done that if my great-grandmother hadn't just made this decision out of convenience. So as we continue throughout our service today, I invite you to be mindful today and for the rest of this week, and maybe for a little longer if you're willing, how your decisions make a difference to those who will come after you. Because they will. Always. For some reason, I thought there was music here, but we're just going to light a second candle.
Would you like some music?
I would never say no to that. We light a second candle today for partners, children, siblings, aunts and uncles, cousins, nieces and nephews, those other members of our families that have departed and whom we still love deeply.
Do you have a magic spell to return someone to life, she asked. No, said the witch, I'm sorry. Oh, she said. Why don't you tell me about them, the witch asked. Will that bring them back, she said. For us, for a little while, the witch said. Stories are a different kind of magic. My dad could find a silver dollar in a mud puddle. Seriously, he actually did. He was always finding money when he went out walking, loose change mostly, and every so often a bill. Soon after he died, I noticed that suddenly there were pennies in my bag. It was his way of saying hello. And then one day I noticed that there was a language to the pennies. I had had a plumbing mishap and was swearing up a blue streak. I looked down at the puddle on the laundry room floor, and there was a penny face down, where only the puddle had been before. I started laughing. He didn't like it when I swore, and he was telling me so. From time to time, the pennies show up, usually when something is bothering me, or when emotions are strong, or when I miss him. Most of the pennies are face up, and every now and then they're face down, telling me he's not happy with what's going on. I keep them in a jar at my ancestral altar. Our beloved dead are always with us, sometimes in obvious ways like the pennies, or in other quieter, less tangible ways. They live in our hearts, they live in our stories, in who we are. They come back to us with a sound, a song, a scent, a change of season. They are always with us.
this morning, been thinking about how religion usually answers for people that question. Where do we go when we die? That's one of the reasons people seek out a faith tradition, to answer that question, to give them comfort. And Unitarian Universalism doesn't do that. We don't tell you where people go when they die. We might have dozens of different ideas about that, just among us who are gathered here today. But one thing we can say is that they are still with us, that we continue to carry the departed with us, and that we have pictures and mementos that we might recall them through. Some of you have already placed pictures or mementos close by, either on a windowsill or on a table. If you didn't have a chance to bring a memento or a picture this morning, maybe you received a card on the way in, a note card that you can write a name on for somebody that you want to memorialize today. If you didn't, and you would like to write a name down, if you would put up your hand, I bet one of our ushers would be nice enough to bring you one. Okay, so lots of folks didn't get cards, so let's give the ushers just a moment. And then I'll invite you to write down a name of someone that you are remembering today. Keep your hand up until you get a card, because I don't think they'll remember all of them. And once you get a card and something to write with, we're going to sing "We Are." And if you did bring a picture or a memento that you haven't placed yet, you can put it on a nearby windowsill. There are some beautiful river stones there if you're afraid of it blowing away. So you can put it there and keep it where you want it. Or if you would like, you can bring it to the table up front. And if you're close to the back, there's another table in the narthex. It looks like there's space up here. Thank you, ushers, for folks that didn't get everything they needed. My hand isn't really up. You don't have to. I'm just modeling. You don't have to bring it down.
Hi.
So I invite you now to write the names of those that you are remembering today. Bring forward a picture or a memento with that card with your name, and leave it on a nearby windowsill or table as we sing together "We Are" in number 10.
Number 1051 is the teal. And there's a repeat on page 3. Just ignore it and go on to page 4.
As we are surrounded by these names and pictures and mementos of the departed, we are also surrounded in this place by memories of those who have been a part of this community and have passed away in the previous year. So we light a third candle of members of this congregation. And I invite you to turn in the great hymnal toward the back, way toward the back to number 721. It's another reading that we get to do together called They Are With Us Still. I'll start off and then I'll let you speak the parts that are in italics. In the struggles we choose for ourselves, in the ways we move forward in our lives and bring our world forward with us.
It is right to remember the names of those who gave us strength in this choice of living. It is right to name the power of our lives well lived.
We share a history with those lives. We belong to the same emotion.
They too were strengthened by what had gone before. They too were drawn on by the vision of what might come to be.
Those who lived before us, who struggled for justice and suffered injustice before us, have not melted into the dust and have not disappeared.
They are with us still. The lives they lived hold us steady.
Their words remind us and call us back to ourselves. Their courage and love evoke our own. We, the living, carry them with us. We are their voices, their hands, and their hearts.
We take them with us, and with them choose the deeper path of living.
We now name those who continue to lend us wisdom and strength from this community. Maurice Adams. Wally Adler. Don Bergstrom. Richard Blocker. Donald Klassen. Angie Coates. Paul Ernsberger. Mildred Hathaway. Carol Imostai. Ida Jones. Kathy Lopez. George McGay. Susan McKenna. Lee Shirk. Susan Walker. For those teachers, mentors, sages, scientists, and artists who have influenced our lives and have departed.
I'm not sure when I decided I wanted to learn how to play guitar, but I know that I bought and owned one for at least like 4 years before I could play it. I remember I bought a Yamaha student guitar from like Sam Ash. I think it came with a little student booklet. I'm pretty sure I learned how to pluck like one chord, and all I could think about was how much my fingers hurt. Everyone's fingers hurt when you start learning a string instrument. But I just didn't understand at the time that you should spend the time to stick with it for a little while before you get used to it. So for years, this instrument just sort of sat in the corner of my room near a window, gathering dust, pretending all the while that it looked cool just to own a guitar. I think about all of the things that had to actually happen from getting that guitar from its wasted spot to a real life instrument that could pick up and play. It took an extraordinary confluence of things. I mean, for one thing, it took a 12-year-old to grow up into a 16-year-old with all of the attendant musical education that comes from becoming 16 rather than being 12. After all, 12-year-old, does not necessarily really get like what a bluesy breakup song is really all about in quite the way perhaps that a 16-year-old does. And that 16-year-old also just, had to have hands that were strong enough and big enough to mature through those of a child. But most of all, of course, it actually took meeting a friend who knew what they were doing on the guitar and who didn't mind sitting down with me one day and writing out the chord shapes on a piece of paper and then sitting with me for long enough to make sure I understood what my left hand was actually supposed to be doing. And then when I saw this pattern of dots on a page, that I understood what that meant. He was also there to tell me, yes, unfortunately, your fingers are just going to hurt for a little while, and that's okay. But over time, it would, develop some calluses, and it wouldn't be so bad. And then most valuable of all, it took that friend being willing to just sit with me so that I could mess up and struggle, and that was exactly what I needed to get to the point where I could start doing this thing right. Now, of course, I love playing guitar. There's nothing I get to do that is so unambiguously joyful and at the same time requires real dedication and seriousness. And each time I play, it is extraordinary to think of the number of teachers whose efforts and energies and intentions are wrapped up in me being able to strum just a few chords. I carry with me my friend and his patience and care. But I also call back to my choir director who taught me everything I know about appreciating music. I draw on family and friends who told me to listen to this artist or that artist. I even bring into the mix my old elementary school music teacher who made me buy a recorder for some reason and learn how to play hot cross buns. To me, there's nothing more magical than teaching. And that is especially true when you're lucky enough to be in that role of the teacher. But a student gets to become something special. A student becomes a conduit, someone who brings back into the world all of the efforts of those who've gone before. And of course, it offers the chance to do the very best thing a student can do to honor their teacher, which is to become one. And in that way, to pass the flame on to another who can carry it out into the world.
We have said that our dead are not truly gone because our relationships with them continue. We've said that we can continue to love those who have departed. But you may ask how. How do we do that in a meaningful way when they aren't physically present to participate in that relationship anymore? There's this wonderful book that people have used in relationships, in marriages, when they're thinking about how different people engage in expressing love. There's this book that Gary Chapman wrote called The 5 Love Languages. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there are different ways that people express and receive love. And if you don't know another person's love language, you might be doing something to express love that other person doesn't necessarily receive very well. And so this book is intended to help you learn one another's love language. But I think we can still do these things, express things in a way that is meaningful to us with the departed. One of these love languages is spending quality time. We can still spend time with the departed. Some people go to an actual grave site. They might have a conversation. I sit and think about what my grandfather might advise me, even though I don't get to hear his voice vibrating the air. I can still hear it in my head. And sometimes I don't listen to his words of wisdom, and sometimes I do. But I can spend that time thinking about what that relationship meant, appreciating him for what he provided for me. And we can do the same with others. Speaking words of affirmation. When we tell other people's stories, when we talk about the gifts that we received from them, I think it expresses our love in a meaningful when we share our stories of the departed with people who didn't know them, and they feel like they know something about that person because of the story that we shared, we're speaking words of affirmation about them in a way that keeps that love alive and present for us. Performing acts of service is another love language that Chapman talks about. And sometimes people perform acts of service by, again, keeping a graveside clean, having some fresh flowers there. Maybe you have an ancestral altar at home that you perform an act of service by keeping that space clean and set aside and sacred. Or maybe you go out into the world and do something because it was meaningful to those who have departed. You take on a little extra meaning behind the justice work that you do, for example, because you know that one of your ancestors or one of the people who have departed from this community even would value what you're doing. Performing acts of service is a way that we love the departed. Exchanging gifts is another way that Chapman says we give and receive love. We can't receive tangible, well, maybe we can receive tangible gifts. If I think about Peggy's pennies, her dad pennies that she finds might be a tangible gift she still receives. Maybe you still receive tangible gifts from the departed. For me, I think a lot more about the intangible things, the wisdom, the music lessons, the insights, the stories, the gifts that we can continue to carry forward and make wise decisions because those departed have given us those insights and that wisdom. And maybe we can offer them gifts as well. Maybe there are things that we can do to honor them that take a physical form in our space. The last one is a little tougher because Chapman talks about physical touch. Physical touch is a way that we give and receive love with the living, and we have some taboos about that in our culture when it comes to the dead. But that's why some of these mementos and pictures, I think, are so important. The quilt that my great-grandmother made just feels different, you know? Being able to touch that physical artifact of her life, it's like I am touching a part of her that she left behind for me to still have that tangible sense of her presence. We have these mementos that we might connect with the departed through. That physical touch that gives us a sense that they are still in relationship with us. We are still in relationship with them. So if you're wondering, if you're trying to figure out for yourself, how do I love the departed in a meaningful way, I invite you to consider these. Spending quality time, speaking words of affirmation, performing acts of service, considering the gifts that you can exchange, and physical touch with those artifacts that they have left behind. These are ways that we can continue to love those who are not here to express it quite as clearly with us anymore. Which leads me to these thoughts by Min Gardner. Can you hear them? Can you hear the whispers of the ancestors? We remember their stories are in these walls, in our bones, in the air that we breathe. Their stories are in the touch of a calloused hand, in the melody of songs we hum while washing dishes, in remembered faces. We hear the whispers of the ancestors, how their stories touch our lives and call us into becoming. we light a fifth candle today for our spiritual ancestors. People we may not have known personally, but whose names we know, whose words continue to inspire us and encourage us. We gather here today on the coattails or on the shoulders of many Unitarians and Universalists who have gone before us. And we talk throughout the year of ways that we can carry that tradition forward. But one of the things that I was so impressed by with this congregation is that your plate offering every week doesn't stay here. It goes out into the community in thoughtful ways. Organizations that represent what we care about in the larger world. There are probably ways that we can strengthen those partnerships. But one of the things that both our Unitarian and our Universalist spiritual ancestors did was they looked at the world around them and they sought ways to make it better. They did not sit back and wait for things to get better. They looked at what they could do as a community and as individuals to create greater wholeness in the world around them. They did not do it perfectly. They did not always do it as wisely as they could have, and we won't either. But one of the ways that we carry their legacy forward is through the way that we take intentional action to build a better world. And you may think that putting money in the offering plate or using the Cash App and sending some money out is an easy thing to do, and maybe you don't really think much about where that goes. But it affects lives. It doesn't just help organizations to stay around, it affects individual lives. Today we are supporting OLA, Ohio. OLA provides a wide variety of bilingual, culturally competent services and programs to meet the diverse needs of Ohio's Latino and immigrant communities. That sounds like a good thing. That sounds like greater wholeness in the world. So specifically, OLA is currently developing a commercial kitchen incubator and a Hispanic center in Painesville to boost education, workforce development, and entrepreneurship and improve the quality of life for all of Northeast Ohio. Those sound like positive endeavors, ways that our resources can help create greater wholeness for individuals. But let me tell you about Valentina. Valentina came to the United States 16 years ago from Mexico. And earlier this year, she signed up for a new initiative that OLA launched in partnership with the Auburn Career Center to help Spanish-speaking adults improve their technical skills. So 4 months of classes, 3 nights a week, Valentina attended this program. When she signed up for the program, she didn't even know how to use a computer. And she just wanted to improve her English skills. And she now has an email address, and she learned to study online in English and Spanish on topics such as measurements, basic machine maintenance, quality control, workplace safety. Valentina had to put in the work, but that work was made possible by OLA. And OLA, because of their community center, is going to be able to expand this program to affect more people like Valentina. That is how we carry the legacy of our spiritual ancestors forward in the world. By recognizing our connection to people that we will never meet, but whose lives we transform through our actions and our generosity. So I invite you to give as you are able and willing. Let's pray.
them to things and to beings. Tis the ancestors' breath, where the fire's voices burn. Tis the ancestors' breath, in the voice of the waters. Those who have died have never known the death comes to the earth. They are in the rustling trees, they are in the growing woods, they are in the crying grass, they are in the holy cross. For dead are under the earth. So listen more often to things and to beings. Listen more often to things and to beings. 'Tis the ancestors' breath, when the fire's voices burn. 'Tis the ancestors' breath, in the voice of the waters. Those who have died have never left, for dead are all as with the living. They are in the woman's breast, they are in the wailing child, they are in the sinner homes, they are in the sinner's ground. They are dead and all as with the living. So listen more often to things and to beings. Listen more often to things and to beings. It's the ancestors' breath, when the fire's voices burn. It's the ancestors' breath, in the voice of the waters.
Please join me in reading the acceptance of the gifts. It's on the extra inserted in order of service. We offer these gifts with gratitude, and we acknowledge the constant gifts from time, talent, and treasure that strengthen and nourish this congregation as a reflection of our commitment to community within and without, our purposeful spirituality that is ever searching and growing, and our intentional actions that lead to greater justice in our congregation, our city, our nation, and our world.
Please rise as willing and able and join in singing our closing hymn, Will the Circle Be Unbroken? The lyrics and the roadmap are on the back of your order of service.
I'm standing on my window on a cold and cloudy day, and the storm is still blowing, for to carry another away. And the circle we are broken, I am one. There's a better way in the sun, in the sun. grow and be great. But I could not hide my sorrow when they laid her in the grave. The circle be unbroken. I am not what I am not. There's a better way in the sky, in the sky. I'm an echo of was lonesome since my mother she was gone. All my brothers and sisters crying, for the home so sad and alone. The circle be unbroken. I am mine, there's a better way in the sky, Lord, in the sky. Let me sing songs of our childhood, hymns of faith that made us strong. Once that mother had taught us, hear the angels sing along. Will the circle be unbroken? I am thine, Lord, I am thine. There's a better way in the sky, Lord, in the sky.
As I mentioned, we will have time. It looks like a sunny day, and I know it's cool, but hopefully outside here between the building and the parking lot, there will be enough space for us to gather safely and share some stories. And we want to do that in a way that honors our respect for one another and our COVID protocols. And so let's remind ourselves of that with our COVID covenant. It's on the insert from your order of service today. In beloved community, we welcome everyone, absolutely everyone, into this space of worship and fellowship. In this time of pandemic, we covenant to respect one another by considering the safety and comfort of others before ourselves, to respect the policies our leadership has established, and to take all our steps for one another grace and understanding as we work to make this a truly safe place for all people. As a benediction today, I will recall us the words that we spoke at the beginning from Windleberry. We clasp the hands of those that go before us and the hands of those who come after us. We enter the little circle of each other's arms, the large circle of those whose hands are joined in the dance, and the larger circle of all creatures, passing in around the light, who move also in the dance, to a music so subtle and vast that no one hears it. And similarly, as we extinguish the flames of our candles today, we will not see their light, but we will continue to carry their light with us.
Please join me in the extinguishing of the chalice. It's on your order of service insert. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we